start attracting people who recognize your value without needing it explained. People who show up not because you chased them, but because your clarity made space for their arrival. Standards don't scare off the right people. They reveal them. And they clear the room of distractions that once consumed your energy, your time, your hope. Now, without saying a word, your presence communicates the message. I know who I am. I know what I bring. And I'm no longer shrinking to be seen. And that kind of presence is unforgiving. It's knowing what peace feels like and refusing to negotiate it. It's having such a strong relationship with yourself that you won't abandon your needs just to keep someone around. Not because you don't care about love, but because you finally care about yourself in love. The truth is, when you start holding standards, real ones, not spoken as ultimatums, but lived as a lifestyle, you start losing access to people who were only drawn to your flexibility, your overgiving, your willingness to bend. That loss can feel like rejection at first, but in reality, it's protection, because your elevation naturally filters out what was never meant to stay at your level of growth. You don't need to argue with someone who can't meet you. You just need to stop stepping down to meet them. And when you do, the whole landscape of your relationships change. There's a deep shift that happens when a woman stops explaining what she wants and simply lives it. She no longer over-communicates her boundaries. She no longer begs to be understood. She no longer tries to educate someone on how to treat her, because now her standards do the speaking for her, and they speak volumes without raising their voice. She's no longer available for inconsistent affection, conditional respect, or temporary intimacy. And the beauty of this is that she doesn't need to debate, defend, or demand it. She simply embodies it. She walks in it. And in doing so, she creates an energetic boundary that only aligned people can pass through. People often think setting high standards is about having a checklist or being demanding, but it's not. It's about being deeply rooted in your self-worth. Your silence becomes more powerful than your pleading ever was. Your absence becomes felt in places where your presence was once taken for granted. Emotionally healthy people, men included, are drawn to that kind of energy because it communicates emotional maturity. It says, I'm no longer addicted to the hope of potential. I only invest where there's mutual clarity and emotional accountability. That energy is rare. That energy is rare. It's calm, confident, and deeply attractive. And the people who aren't ready to meet you there, they'll fall away. Not because you pushed them, but because inconsistency no longer has anywhere to land in your life. When you wake up to this pattern and begin to choose differently, everything shifts. You no longer linger in situations that drain your energy or confuse your intuition. You stop making excuses for someone's inability to be clear, consistent, and emotionally present. You recognize that confusion is an answer. Silence is a decision. Mixed signals are a no. And instead of reacting to those patterns, trying harder, explaining more, holding on tighter, you simply remove yourself gracefully, quietly, with strength, not spite. Because you know you don't build love through convincing. You build it through mutual safety, emotional responsibility, and consistent actions. Here's the magnetic part. When you become unavailable for inconsistency, you automatically elevate the type of connection you attract. You move out of energetic availability for people who thrive on keeping you guessing. There's a quiet transformation that happens when a woman decides that inconsistency is no longer something she entertains. Not because she's bitter, not because she's hardened, but because she's finally reached a point in her self-worth where chaos no longer feels exciting and emotional breadcrumbs no longer feel like love. In the past, she may have confused inconsistency with intensity, the hot and cold behavior, the push-pull dynamic, the constant second-guessing. It all mimicked the feeling of passion. But beneath that pattern was emotional instability, often rooted in childhood wounds or a normalized sense of unpredictability in love. And when that becomes familiar, it's easy to think inconsistency means someone cares, that their return after distancing is proof of connection. But it's not. It's proof of your tolerance. That healing allows you to walk away not just from toxic people, but from the temptation to prove yourself to anyone at all. You no longer need to earn a seat at the table. You become the table. You start attracting people who meet you, not people you have to chase, convince, or rescue. And when someone isn't aligned, it doesn't throw you into spirals of shame or self-doubt. You see it clearly. You bless it, you release it, because your self-worth is no longer on the line. That's the freedom that comes when the need to be chosen dissolves. You remember you've already been chosen by yourself. And from that place, you stop magnetizing the kind of relationships that feel like emotional roller coasters. Because you're no longer the woman trying to prove she's lovable when that need is unhealed. It runs everything. It makes you chase people who pull away. It makes you stay in dynamics that drain you. It keeps you in cycles where you're constantly proving, performing, or tolerating. Because part of you believes that if this person finally chooses you, it will mean you're enough. But when you begin to heal that root, when you stop outsourcing your value to the attention of someone who can't see you fully, your world changes. You no longer feel chemistry with chaos. You don't confuse emotional highs and lows with passion. You stop feeling addicted to mixed signals because you're no longer trying to decode someone else's confusion to find your worth in it. Instead, you feel peace in consistency. You feel drawn to stability, not because it's boring, but because your nervous system is no longer wired for survival love. You protect your peace. You protect your time. You don't withhold to manipulate. You reserve to preserve. And that energy is unmistakable. It's felt in your tone, your posture, your silence, your presence. Because the most captivating women aren't the ones who give everything away. They're the ones who know when to give, how to give, and most importantly, when to simply hold. There's a moment in every woman's journey when she realizes that her pattern of attracting emotionally unavailable or chaotic relationships isn't bad luck. It's a mirror. It's reflecting back a deeper need that's been running in the background. The need to be chosen. Not loved from a place of mutual connection, but chosen from a place of childhood hunger, of emotional scarcity, of trying to feel worthy through someone else's validation. It places her back in the seat of discernment. Instead of being consumed by whether he likes her, she asks, do I feel safe here? Do I feel seen here? Is this aligned with who I am becoming? And that inner shift, where she becomes the one who evaluates rather than just hopes to be chosen, is what makes her unforgettable. Men feel it, even if they can't explain it. It's in the way she listens without needing to prove, the way she responds instead of reacts, the way she's kind but not performative, the way she's available but not desperate. That balance of openness and self-containment becomes a mirror. It reflects maturity. It reflects confidence. It reflects wholeness. When you hold your energy, you stop being drained by people who can't meet you where you are. You stop inviting chaos because you no longer chase it. When a woman learns to hold her energy, she becomes deeply magnetic, not because she's playing hard to get, but because she's anchored. She's no longer reactive. She's no longer jumping in to fix, explain, or over to function when someone pulls away or becomes inconsistent. She doesn't beg for clarity. She becomes clarity. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's about deeply caring, but only giving access to that care when it's earned. When she learns to hold her energy, she stops pouring herself into uncertainty. She pauses. She watches. She listens not just to what someone says, but to how they show up consistently over time. That pause, the decision to observe instead of immediately engage, is where her power lives. In dating and relationships, this energetic self-possession shifts the dynamic in profound ways. The right man, the grounded, present, emotionally intelligent man, isn't looking for perfection. He's not looking for someone to entertain him, fix him, or chase him. He's looking for someone who knows how to sit in silence without panic. Someone who knows who they are without applause. Someone who brings peace, not pressure. And when he meets that kind of woman, he doesn't hesitate. He recognizes her because he's done performing too. There is a quiet power in a woman who knows how to hold her energy. She doesn't chase. She doesn't overextend. She doesn't give her time, affection, or attention away like it costs nothing. She understands that her presence is a gift. Not something to be scattered, but something to be shared with intention. That awareness changes everything. Peace doesn't mean passive. It doesn't mean you have no standards or that you tolerate less than you deserve. In fact, it usually comes after you've walked away from what didn't honor you, from what stirred up anxiety and chaos, and from the parts of yourself that thought love had to be earned through exhaustion. Peace comes when you finally decide you're done hustling for worth. And here's the irony. When you stop performing, you stop attracting people who only love the performance. You stop drawing in those who are entertained by your energy, but not invested in your heart. You stop tolerating confusion disguised as chemistry. And instead, you start pulling in people who feel safe around you because you're safe within yourself. This kind of woman doesn't enter a room wondering if she'll be chosen. She enters knowing she's already chosen herself. That self-acceptance is disarming. It softens the space around her. It creates a feeling of safety, not because she's bending over backward to make everyone comfortable, but because she's comfortable in her own skin. And peace like that is rare. It's magnetic. What most people, especially emotionally available men, long for isn't someone who's constantly performing a highlight reel of who they think they need to be. They want someone who brings calm, presence, stability, Not the kind of stability that comes from controlling everything, but the kind that comes from being okay with not needing to, from not clinging, from not panicking when things feel uncertain. That's a different kind of strength, and it doesn't scream, it soothes. Independence like that is magnetic because it radiates peace. It tells the world, I belong to myself first. And when someone belongs to themselves, they don't become a burden to others. They become an inspiration, a mirror, a partner, not a project. That's what makes people stay. Not because they're needed, but because being around someone so rooted, so self-led, makes them want to be better too. In a world where so many relationships are built on performance, on proving, pleasing, and pretending, there's something deeply attractive about a woman who simply is. She's not trying to impress. She's not curating a version of herself to win someone's attention. She's not constantly editing her behavior to stay likable. She's just real, honest, present, and peaceful. This doesn't mean you don't want love or that you don't feel deeply. In fact, the women who practice this kind of emotional sovereignty tend to love more fully, not less, because they're not loving from a place of fear or lack. They're not trying to extract meaning from a relationship. They bring meaning to it. They can give without losing. They can receive without attaching their worth to it. And in doing so, they create something rare: freedom within connection. That's the paradox that many people, especially emotionally mature men, find irresistible. It's not the woman who gives everything away that draws people in. It's the woman who doesn't need to chase, doesn't need to convince, and doesn't collapse into another person. It's the woman who is already standing strong on her own path and simply invites others to walk beside her, not carry her or complete her. There is something unmistakably powerful about a woman who doesn't rely on anyone else to define her. Not in a performative way, not the I don't need a man script that's set out of pain, but in a soft, steady, grounded way that comes from knowing who she is when no one's watching. That kind of independence isn't loud or defensive. It doesn't push people away. It simply says, I am whole. Your presence is welcome, but not required for me to be complete. Magnetic independence doesn't come from building walls, it comes from building foundations, emotional, spiritual, mental. It means your joy, your peace, your sense of meaning don't disappear the moment someone pulls away, disappoints you, or can't meet your needs. It means you've cultivated a life so full, so rich with your own values and inner world that anyone who enters it is stepping into something already sacred, not something half-built, hoping to be saved. There's so much power in being able to care deeply while also letting go of what you can't control. When a woman says, I want connection, but I'm not going to beg for it, she reclaims her dignity. When she can listen without immediately defending, speak her truth without expecting a certain reaction, and hold space without losing herself, she changes the dynamic completely. She moves from emotional reactivity to emotional intelligence. People feel that shift. Especially in romantic relationships, that kind of grounded energy stands out. It's not chaotic. It's not dramatic. It's stable, but not rigid. There's warmth, but there's also a firm sense of self that doesn't bend for validation. That kind of detachment creates safety, not just for her, but for anyone close to her. Because when someone knows you aren't going to collapse under pressure or take everything personally, they can actually relax in your presence. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word and assume it means coldness, distance, or not caring. But that's not what healthy detachment looks like. Real detachment doesn't mean you stop loving, stop listening, or stop engaging. It means you stop trying to control things that were never yours to manage in the first place. It's not apathy, it's emotional clarity. A woman who practices healthy detachment doesn't shut down or disappear when things get hard. Disappointments are not part of the process. They simply were not meant to be. She stays present, she communicates, she holds space, but she no longer ties her identity, self-worth, or emotional safety to someone else's behavior. That shift is everything. Because once you stop making someone else's approval the measure of your value, you're free. Free to show up honestly, without anxiety trying to micromanage the outcome, because there's a difference. The former comes from wholeness, the latter comes from fear. People can feel the difference, even if they don't consciously know it. When a woman shares selectively and intentionally, it shows self-respect. It shows emotional maturity. It tells the other person, I value my story enough not to hand it to just anyone. And ironically, that very restraint, the decision to protect your story instead of spilling it, often builds deeper curiosity, attraction, and respect. There's power in mystery, not in manipulation or withholding, but in discernment. You don't need to perform your pain to prove you're real. You don't need to overexpose your heart just to feel seen. People connect not to your details, but to your presence. And when you carry yourself like your story is sacred, not a sales pitch, you don't just connect, you captivate. We live in a culture that confuses openness with oversharing. Somewhere along the line, many of us were taught that being vulnerable means putting everything out there. Our fears, our past, our pain, our insecurities, all at once, hoping that transparency will create closeness. But what we often don't realize is that vulnerability, when used without boundaries, doesn't invite connection. It can actually push people away or overwhelm them. True vulnerability isn't impulsive. It's not a flood of information poured out in the first conversation hoping for validation. It's a slow reveal. It's built on mutual trust. When you're secure in yourself, you don't use your story to earn love or approval. You share it when it's safe, when it's right, and when it's earned. That's why detachment is so powerful in this context. It gives you space to pause, to ask, am I sharing this to deepen a relationship, or am I trying to secure one? And here's the secret. Confident women don't become confident by accident. It's not just a personality trait. It's a practice. It's built through self-trust. Every time she listens to her gut and honors what she knows deep down, her trust in herself grows. Every time she says no to something that doesn't serve her, even if it disappoints someone else, she sends a message to herself. I've got your back. That inner loyalty is where true confidence is born. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be aligned. You don't need to prove anything when you already feel secure in what you bring to the table. And when that kind of woman walks away from anything misaligned, with grace, not bitterness, people notice, especially men. Because there's nothing more compelling than someone who doesn't need you to choose them, but still wants connection from a place of strength. Confidence isn't about volume. It's not about being the loudest person in the room, the most liked on social media, or the one who dominates the conversation. True confidence is often quiet. It's grounded. It lives in small choices made consistently when no one is watching. And the kind of confidence that draws people in, especially men who are emotionally mature, is the kind that doesn't need constant reassurance. When a woman knows who she is, she doesn't have to explain it, defend it, or oversell it. She doesn't perform her worth, she embodies it. There's a difference between saying, "I'm enough," and truly knowing it in your bones. That kind of knowing is subtle but powerful. It shows up in how she walks into a room, how she answers a question, how she can say, "I'm not available for that," without being defensive or cold. That's the kind of energy that doesn't chase, it attracts. Men are not drawn to chaos, they're drawn to clarity. And boundaries provide that. When you say no without guilt, when you say yes from a full body place of alignment, it shows you value your energy and your peace. That creates an atmosphere of respect, and in that space, real connection becomes possible. You're no longer available for confusion. You're not entertaining games, passive aggression, or mixed signals. And that's magnetic, because the people who are truly ready to meet you with presence, with respect, with maturity, they won't be turned off by your limits. They'll be drawn to them. They'll know they've found someone who doesn't just talk about love, they live it by honoring themselves first. And from that place, everything changes. We often think love is about saying yes, being available, being accommodating, especially as women. We've been raised, praised, and rewarded for our compliance. But what if the very thing that draws people in, especially men, is not our openness, but our ability to set limits? When a woman knows where she ends and someone else begins, she becomes powerful. Boundaries aren't harsh or cold. They're incredibly loving. They say, "I know myself, I respect myself, and because I do, I can respect you too." Think about it. When someone tells you clearly and calmly what works for them and what doesn't, you instantly know where you stand. You don't have to guess. That kind of self-awareness is attractive, especially in a world full of blurred lines, unclear intentions, and performative intimacy.